Hello friends and welcome back to another video. I'm so excited today because we have a special guest of Peter Greenberg sitting down with us. We plan on tapping into all of his travel knowledge and discussing what he thinks is the future will hold for us as we travel and cruise and the world begins to reopen. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm hanging in. I'm in my bunker here in New York for the last 8 weeks. It's the longest period of time I've been in any one location since I'm 17 years of age. So you can imagine I'm like getting ready to become a barricaded suspect.
Oh, cabin fever is setting in.
Yes.
My goodness. Well, I hope you're, getting your exercise, taking your walks, getting that fresh air, the clear air. I know after a crazy lifestyle of go, 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 that can definitely be challenging. But for those who don't know, Peter Greenberg is an incredible, talented CBS travel host and America's travel detective. So excited to get to know you. But for those who don't know you, why don't you give us a brief synopsis of who you are?
Sure. Well, my whole background is in print journalism to begin with. I'm a writer. I'm an investigative reporter. I was at Newsweek for many years when Newsweek was a real magazine. I then went on to produce a number of movies. I was running television at Paramount. I then, of course, never left journalism, have been writing about travel since day one because as a correspondent for Newsweek, I was always the guy with the suitcase packed in the trunk of my car because I was always racing to the airport to be first at the scene of something. And it dawned on me very early on in my career that nobody was really looking at travel and transportation as news, when in fact, it was big news.
Right.
And so in order to understand more about it, I thoroughly immersed myself in the process of travel. So I still carry cockpit and jump seat authorization on every plane that flies. I'm not a licensed pilot, but I am a Coast Guard captain. I basically live on a boat in Los Angeles and I operate my boats here in New York. And so I can, I basically, when I say immerse myself in the process, I learned, I went to flight training school. I was in the simulators. I was a flight attendant training school, obviously the Coast Guard license. But the bottom line is I do that so I can ask the right questions to the people who really will then understand that I might know a little bit about what I'm talking about. And they'll be comfortable then in telling me all the things I need to know and learn so I can share it with my audience. Because
Yeah.
I believe, and I still believe, that if you can understand and appreciate the process, that's the only time you can value the product. And that's what I try to explain to my audience every time I'm on the air or every time I write a story about what they need to know about the process so they can actually get from point A to point B and not be a victim.
And you do it so well too, particularly with your travel shows, explaining to everyone. I really enjoy them, watching them and just learning about, far off destinations that I haven't traveled to yet. And you've been to so many amazing places. So rapid fire, how many countries have you been to? How many airline miles have you flown? And how many cruises have you been on?
Well, let's start with how many countries? 151. Now, that's 151 out of the 193 listed by the United Nations. So I still have another, 42 to go. If you go to 196 countries, I got 45 to go. But I'm not in a race. I'm not one of those people who can't wait to tell you I've checked off a box. I don't do it like that. And if I stop at a place to change planes, that doesn't qualify.
Hmm.
I have to immerse myself in the location and in the culture and with the people.
Right. So
You
even
asked how
when you
many
get a
miles.
passport stamp of a certain place and people will qualify that as, oh, I stopped in Frankfurt Airport. No, you have not been to
No.
Germany.
And by the way, how many people think they've been to Chicago because they changed planes at O'Hare? It's the same problem.
Exactly.
It doesn't work. You asked how many miles I have. I'll let you guess.
Oh my gosh. Probably more than I can ever imagine.
That's not a guess.
Okay, probably a couple million. More than
Okay,
that?
you're not going to the Showcase Showdown. No, 22 million.
Yeah, so that's a couple. A
That's
little
a
more than a
couple.
couple,
We're,
but yeah.
we're in double digits, yeah. And by the way, no prizes for that either, because what's the point of having all those miles if the airlines don't let you redeem them? So that's another part of the process I talk about all the time. And what was your last question? Oh, about cruising. How many
Yes, how
cruises
many
I've been on?
cruises?
Probably, I would say close to 100.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
But
Very
remember, I've been on ships since the late 70s, so we're already or over 40 years there. So
Yeah. So you basically have seen a lot of the travel industry in general, but specifically cruising as well, which has changed so much. Everything has changed over the years,
Right.
and over just the last 10 years in reality of how
How
much.
about over the last 3 months?
Well, we're going to get to that, of course, but
Okay.
definitely that it's unrecognizable. So let's jump right into current events and everything that's going on. So particularly, well, we'll actually back up first. Let's talk about over the past 10 years first. So you've been covering all of that. So what are some of the biggest changes over cruising particularly that has changed since then? And we'll work our way to current events.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when I did crossings as opposed to cruising. I'm a huge fan of days at sea. And interestingly enough, before the pandemic, a lot of cruises were coming back to that again.
Mm-hmm.
But not doing like one port every 8 hours, although those cruises still exist. When I first got on cruise ships, we were talking, not many choices, not many options. You had to pick whether you had first or second seating because they couldn't accommodate everybody in the dining room. Dessert was always baked Alaska. I sort of miss it a little, but no, I don't. And then
It had a little
the
bit of
choice,
glamour to it, didn't it?
yes, people dress for dinner, but the other noticeable change going back that many years was your choices of ports, right? The choices of ports, if you go back to when the Love Boat was on the air in the late 70s, how many ports were there, that cruise ships called on? Maybe 40, maybe around the world, if you were lucky, right? And the bottom line is today we're over 1,400.
Yeah.
So that'll give you an idea of the changes. So there's not a continent now that you can't sail to, and I'm waiting for more to open. You're going to see a number of ports opening up in the Gulf, including Saudi Arabia. You'll see sooner or later, you're going to see ports open up in North Korea. And the reason for that is places that even, other places in the Black Sea, like Iran. But the thing that's interesting is if you take a look at the dynamics of travel and tourism, their economic impact, what's the one thing that North Korea produces that the world consumes in volume? The answer is zero. So at a certain point, it's going to be travel and tourism that saves their economy, and cruising will be a part of that. I've sailed around North Korea in the LSE. We just haven't gone in.
Right. That's really fascinating. I haven't thought much about cruising to that part of the world at all. So,
Oh no, it's phenomenal. I remember back in 1984, there was a ship called the Pearl of Scandinavia. It was like a one-ship cruise line, and great ship, great crew, great captain. And you flew to Tokyo, then took the bullet train down to Kobe, got on the ship in Kobe, and you sailed the inland sea of Japan. Amazing.
Wow.
And where did you stop? Nagasaki. And next thing you know, you are immersed in the history of the atomic bomb and what happened in 1945, and just an amazing emotional experience. And then all the way through the inland sea of Japan, what gets you to the Yellow Sea, up around Korea, North Korea, into Dalian, the old Port Arthur in China, and then all the way down the Chinese coast. In 1984, stopping in places for the very first time, they'd never seen a cruise ship. They'd never seen Americans.
Yeah.
So it was absolutely amazing. And then you ended up where? In Hong Kong. How cool is that, right? So those are the things that I remember, being able to be a pioneer, sailing into Dubrovnik right after the war. Not now with all the Game of Thrones freaks, but I'm talking about after the war.
You're not a fan?
I'm not a fan of overcrowding and people looking for where movies were shot. No, not really.
Yeah, I never got into Game of Thrones, so it's okay.
No, I've never seen a single episode, but that's not the point. The point is I want to see a place where it's, look, the bridge of sighs in Venice cannot be the bridge of thighs. It's enough is enough. And isn't it interesting that 3 months ago we were talking about overcrowding and over tourism? Now we're talking about zero. We're talking about zero. And we've been given an opportunity now, and so have the cruise lines, to figure out how we can now go back to travel responsibly, to use destinations for the way they were supposed to be used, and not 8-hour turnarounds where you're buying another hat and a T-shirt, where you get a real chance to immerse yourself, even as an appetizer in the culture. And a number of cruise lines are starting to do that with overnights in ports. So you're not rushing, you're not racing back to the ship and jumping off another tour bus.
Right.
But my great memories of cruising going back to the 70s was when the ships really were exploring, when they were really going to destinations for the first or second or third time, where it was much of a new thing for you as it was for the people you were visiting. And by the way, there are still another 500 ports out there waiting to do that. So we haven't run out.
Yeah, that's incredible as the world of cruising is coming back a little bit to. I love hearing how the stories have like the Venice canals are
Yeah,
air pollution and everything is just that going back to what it was and taking a step back and kind of
yeah.
giving the world what it needs of not the overcrowding and
Well,
letting it
whether
heal
we like it
itself.
or not, nature's given us a wake-up call. Let's hope
Yes.
we pick up the phone. Let's hope we pick up the phone now. There's a way to find an acceptable middle ground for even mass tourism. It's about changing the seasonality of it. And
Mm-hmm.
and right now we're going to be changing the seasonality of how we even work. Look for America to go to a 4-day work week pretty soon.
Right.
Look for people to be working from home where you are right now and where I am right now.
Yeah.
Look for people not buying a lot of automobiles because they don't have to commute anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the danger there is, getting into everybody being siloed and not really having face-to-face conversations and collaborating. But the needle's going to have to go this way before it gets back. And but while it's going this way, let's reassess where we go on a cruise ship, how we go on a cruise ship, what we do when we get there, what we shouldn't do when we get there. And I'm not talking about, just targeting 6,000 passenger cruise ships. That's not the point.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way. The cruise lines have been excellent in managing their flow and in managing movement of people. Now they just have to change their direction,
Yeah.
and they'll be better off, and we'll be better off.
Wonderful. So let's talk exactly that of how we are going to change the direction between flying and getting to our cruise destination the day before, staying in the hotel and the cruise line. What are some of your predictions on thinking that what it's going to look like? I know recently the CEO of Royal Caribbean has somewhat said unofficially that buffets are going to be actually no longer. At first we were thinking that they would be serving us, but now they might just do all away with it. So there's so many, minute changes
Well,
and big
yeah.
things that are going to be affecting the guest experience. So what's your take
Well,
on
think about this. What is the sort of a social definition of a cruise ship? It's large social gatherings,
that? Mm-hmm.
shared experiences in confined spaces. I mean, you're limited even on the big ships to space.
Mm-hmm.
Space. Every naval engineer will tell you about the challenge of space and how they use it. So, they have the same challenges that airlines do,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't like widen the ship, you can't widen the airplane. You can do stuff in hotels a little bit easier, but not much when it comes to public spaces. So to what extent do they have to change in the short term the floor plan of the public spaces? Are you going to limit the number of people in the pool? Are you going to have, remember the days of first and second seating? That
Right.
may have to come back
Yeah.
because too many people together in the dining room. You see, in the absence of widespread testing and a vaccine that's working and scalable, they may not have a choice. So the cruise lines have a steep hill to climb on two levels: public perception and operations.
Right.
Public perception, let's not kid ourselves, even though about 22 ships, only 22 ships were really negatively affected with infections and deaths of the 366 ships that are out there. And even though that's less than 10%, the indelible visual images that Americans saw of the Princess ship being quarantined in Yokohama, the Grand Princess being unable to get into San Francisco for a while, and of course the Holland America ships in Florida and what they went through, those memories don't go away. And I can tell you, so many people come up to me right now, friends of mine who I think are reasonably intelligent and well-read, saying, you couldn't pay me to go back on a cruise ship.
Really?
But most of them don't say, you couldn't pay me to go back on one, you couldn't pay me to get me on. And most of those people haven't been on one. So what's going to save the cruise lines, and it's not going to be this year, it'll be next year, is the repeat cruisers, their loyal customers who have a sense of entitlement about their ships. There's almost the feeling that they own them. And they'll do the future bookings, and they'll come back, and then word of mouth will get viral, and people will realize that not everybody comes back frothing at the mouth and glowing in the dark. I got that. But for the rest of this year, no matter what cruise lines announce anything, be honest about it, nobody's sailing anywhere.
Well, thank you, Peter, so much. I can't believe all the great insight. I thank you so much. And everyone at home, if you have any additional questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed our chat, please do give the video a big thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, ciao for now. Well, that does it for part 1 of this 2-part series with Peter Greenberg. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to give it a big thumbs up and check out part 2, where we discuss even more of cruising and what is to come in the future. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, ciao for now.